everyone, I'm back, yay. I'm sorry there's been a bit of a delay. If you are friends with me or if you follow me on Facebook, you'll know that I had a little issue with my sewing machine, which I think I mentioned in the last video that it was breaking the thread as I was sewing. So I've pulled the whole thing apart, put it back together again. I found there was a little burr, like a little rough piece of metal in the needle plate, which is the grey thing underneath the needle, surprisingly enough, needle plate. And I think that that's where the thread was catching, particularly if I was trying to sew something just a little bit thicker, so the needle was having to put more pressure on to get through the fabric, but also the resistance was leading the thread to break. We're going to have another go today. We'll see how it goes. I think I fixed it at least well enough to do this, but obviously I can't take it to the sewing machine shop in Guildford because they're closed, because everything's closed. So let's have a look at what we're going to do today. So I thought today we'd have a bit of a two-part project, or a two ways of doing it project, and I'll show you both ways, then you can decide which one you want to do, and depending on how much fabric you've got or what the pieces of fabric are that you've got to work with. So the first one that I'm going to show you is the very simple basic coaster. So this is a coaster. As you see, they have colourful, this like cartoon print fabric on the front, and then the backs are denim. I hate to be predictable, but yeah, and actually denim is a really good fabric to have as a backing fabric for a coaster because it's kind of tough, it's durable, you can put your mug of coffee on it or your tea or your whatever, put it on your furniture and then stop any of your furniture getting wrecked from hot mugs of coffee and tea. So I've made 3 already and I'm going to make the 4th one now, so it's like a little set. This will make a really nice like birthday gift set, Christmas gift set, whatever you wanted to do, like a little four-piece coaster set that you made yourself for granny or granddad or auntie or uncle or somebody. How lovely. Or just make it for yourself because you're worth making things for on your own. So this is 3 and we're going to make the 4th one now, and I'll show you how to do it. So in terms of material, really simple. What you need is 2 pieces of fabric. You need your decorative fabric, and you could do it in any cotton fabric that you wanted, polyester, whatever fabric. This is a great one for if you've got an old shirt or an old skirt or something that you don't wear anymore but you don't want to get rid of it, it's damaged, got holes in it or whatever. You can cut the fabric out and make these little squares. So here's the square of fabric, which is 12 centimeters by 12 centimeters. So I should explain, fabric has a right side and a wrong side. You'll probably hear people in sewing worlds talking about the right side and the wrong side of the fabric. So the right side is this side, which is where the pattern is the boldest, the strongest, the clearest. And then on the wrong side, you still see the pattern. Actually looks all right on this fabric, but it's like a little more faded. The colours aren't so strong. That's like the wrong side, the underside of the fabric, the one that's not front facing. Same with the denim, you see it's a bit bolder, a bit darker on the right side of the fabric. If I turn it over, you see it's a little bit more faded on the wrong side. So this would have been the side that was inside the jeans when I was wearing them as jeans, and this would have been the side on the outside that you would have seen if you ever saw me wearing this pair of jeans. It's possible that you did. So we're going to do a technique in sewing which is a pull-through technique, where basically you sew something inside out and then you turn it the right way in. This is so common. So many things are made, particularly homeware type things, are made using this technique. So we're going to learn it now on a very simple coaster, and then quite a lot of the other projects that I've got for you are going to use exactly that same technique, sewing inside out and then turning it through. So once you've cut your fabric out, 12 by 12 square, both pieces, what you're going to do is put the right side of the denim, and this is the right side of the printed decorative fabric, whatever you're using. So you're going to put the 2 right sides together. So on the outside, what you're looking at is the wrong side of the denim and the wrong side of the decorative fabric. So you see I have my 2 pieces of fabric and they are pinned together with about 2 centimetres from the edge each pin there. So now what I'm going to do, and I will show you on sewing machine cam, which is down here as usual, I'm going to sew around the edges of the fabric. Have a look at the plain side, it'd be easier to explain it to you. So I'm going to sew all the way around the edge, but not completely. I'm going to leave a gap here about 6 centimetres or so long. I'm not going to leave it in the corners because it just makes it easier to turn through if you leave your little gap on one of the straight edges, and it makes it a little bit easier for sewing it later on as well. So I'm going to sew from here all the way round to about here, leaving this little gap right here. So I've got my fabric in the machine, and I'm sewing basically half a foot's width is going to be my seam allowance. So I usually use the foot as my edge guide here, unless I'm doing something where I need a larger edge. I very often use the edge of the foot as my guide for the fabric. So I'm basically sewing there and allowing the fabric edge to run alongside the edge of the foot. It's about 6 millimeters if you're counting the mathematics. You're probably not. So here we go, here it is sewn around the edge, and again if I show you on the wrong side you'll be able to see I've left this gap in the stitching from about here to about here, and that's going to be where we turn it through. The first thing you want to do is snip off the loose ends that you've made because they will just get in the way, and potentially when you go around with the next row of stitching they can get caught in the machine, caught down in your bobbin holder. You want the least amount of loose threads hanging off of anything when you put them in a sewing machine. And then the next thing you can do is take out the pins that you put in before, just to hold the fabric together, because you don't need the fabric to be held together with pins because it's held together with stitches. So I'm just going to move the sewing machine, go back to sewing machine cam, and show you just one little step you need to do before you turn any fabric through. So just a second, we're going back down here. So the one little step that you need to do before you turn any fabric through is just a little thing on the corners. So you see you have your fabric here, and you've got your where you've sewn into the corner, done a pivot, and then come out the other side. There's one little thing that you need to do that will make turning it through so much easier and will give you a much sharper, nicer, crisp corner. And that is to take your scissors and to cut the corner. Don't cut into the stitching, obviously, but just cut the corner off. You can cut almost up to the stitching, just leave a couple of millimeters. Do that on each corner. Then when you turn it through, this is a very dodgy corner, as you see. When you turn it through, you'll get this nice, crisp, neat corner, so much more than if you had not done that step. So now you've got the corners cut, you can turn the fabric through. So you're going to basically open up the little gap that you left in your stitching and pull the fabric. I'll do it down here so you can see. Pull the fabric gently, don't kind of yank it, but just gently work the fabric all the way through the hole that you've just made, left in your stitching, and it should come through quite easily. Just have to wiggle it around a bit. Now don't worry too much about pulling the corners through so that they're crisp, because there's one little thing that you need that will help you do that. A knitting needle is really good for this. Also, so is a chopstick or a conductor's baton. Or don't use a pen, because you'd have to leave the lid on and then it won't go sharp into the corners. And if you take the lid off, you'll get pen marks in your fabric. So if you take a knitting needle and poke it into the fabric, I'll do that up here, poke it into the fabric and poke it into the corners, it will just pull your corners out to a nice sharp corner like that. There you go, that's all right, isn't it? Do that on the others quickly. Well, the last thing you're going to do is where you've turned it through, see it's now on the sides it's going to be as a coaster. So you've got this funny raw edge here that you use to turn it through. So what you're going to do is very gently tuck, if you ever so slightly pull the fabric, it should pull it into position, and then you can tuck the loose end in, make sure that that's tucked in, and you've got those nice folded edges along here. And then if you stick a pin in it, now when you top stitch around it, you won't see where that gap is at all. It will just be magically gone, I promise. So top stitching, what is top stitching? Top stitching is basically any stitch that is seen. So all these stitches that you did are on the inside. And if I show you on one of the other coasters that I made in the set, you'll see it's got a row of stitches around the outside that are visible. So top stitching can be either decorative or functional or both, and this is both. So it's decorative, you see it, it's also functional because it seals the gap and holds that together. But I challenge you on here to look at this edge and see where I left the gap so that I could turn it through. You can't, because it's magically disappeared. I'm going to start my top stitching. You see where my pin is? So this is my open seam at the moment. I'm going to start my top stitching about here. So not directly over where that is, but kind of at the corner along that same edge. Now with the top stitching, I'm not going to go right to the edge of the foot. I'm going to use about half the foot as my guide for my top stitching, because I want this to be, if I show you on this one here, you can see where the stitching is. It's very, very close to the edge of the fabric. So the only thing left to do, as always, is to cut off the loose ends. And because you sealed that seam with a back stitch, you can cut right, literally right up to the fabric, so that there are absolutely no loose ends on there at all, right up to the stitch line. And there you have coaster number 4 in my cartoon coaster series. A nice set of 4 to make a lovely gift for somebody or to just have for yourself. So the next project I'm going to show you is really similar. It's still a coaster set, and it's going to be a little basic introduction to the world of quilting. Very, 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 very basic. Don't get intimidated, but it's just a different way of doing it, and allows you to do a different kind of design by using a really, really basic, when I say basic, I mean like quilting 101 technique. So part 2 of the video coming now.